Welcome back to the Inside Source Executive Video Series. My name is Tiura, and I'm President and CEO of Sourcing Industry Group. And with me today is Linda Chapman, and Linda and I go way back, many, many years, but Linda has such a wonderful past. Former CPO of Scotiabank, Fifth Third Bank, and most recently BMO Financial Group. But now, Linda is leading her own consulting firm called ONTALA Business Solutions, Performance Solutions, And Linda is somebody that fills a room. She is always forward-thinking. She's always ahead of the industry. And she really brings to us just a wealth of information. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Dawn.
And you haven't aged in these 20 years or so that we've known each other.
Okay, and neither of you.
We'll go with that. So let's talk about the evolution, because when you were a CPO the first time and you've gone through these major transformations, the role has come so far. So let's talk from your perspective, the evolution, because you certainly have lived it.
Yes, I have lived it. So back when I got into strategic sourcing as a CPO back in '96, which is some time ago now, it was really, it had migrated from manufacturing, so it's still a lot of talk about unit cost reduction. But I come from services organizations, specifically financial services, and unit cost reduction is not what banking is all about. That just is not in their lexicon. So really starting to figure out how to add value to the business. And the focus was for many, many years, obviously, cost reduction. Mm-hmm. But I have never led an organization that left it there at cost reduction. So I've always worked with people who felt as motivated as I did to add business value. And so in doing so, basically, you're going to find that you do generate savings. It's just as a natural byproduct. But the focus should always be on the business and what the business value is. So I've had the great good fortune to work with some really remarkable people and to be a member of SIG. I mean, I've said it many times over. There is nothing that compares with SIG, Dawn. It is a fantastic.
Well, it's because of members like you.
Well, thank you, but it also is it's a place to come and to share ideas. So I've learned a lot through the years. And so basically, if you look at the evolution, one of my goals as a CPO years ago was really to give us a seat at the table. Okay. So what's happened is we heard today from Oliver Wyman that most CPOs now are just reporting one level below the CEO. And I hope in my lifetime that we see that as actually a direct report to the CPO in large organizations with significant relationships that are spending lots of money and delivering services through third parties. And I think that basically, we've come a long, long way. It's not about unit cost reduction anymore. And so getting that seat at the table, I think most people have earned that. And that really is the first major evolution. And I feel really proud to be part of that.
But you also really specialize a lot on risk, and you identify the risk aspects. And we heard from Teresa Payton this morning, former CIO of the White House, that 65% of the companies have suffered a breach through their vendor relationships. So what are you doing in the industry, and how do you think we can address it better?
I'm as excited about third-party risk management now as I was about strategic sourcing back in the early days. So when I think about basically the evolution, all good sourcing professionals have been focused on risk the whole time. That's why you do RFPs and due diligence, et cetera. What's really changed was the financial crisis back in 2008. And I would have to say the financial services sector, due to the regulatory environment and because of the impact on the overall economy and the world at large, that there's been a lot of focus on improving the practices in third-party risk management. So back in 2008, there was quite a significant regulatory pressure to improve the practices around the identification, the assessment, the identification, the management and control of risk. And so just like strategic sourcing, that once it got some legs under it and really started to accelerate as a profession, this in itself is a profession that is associated very closely, in fact, it is completely intertwined with CPOs and strategic sourcing discipline. So what I'm most excited about is that it is a new way to add business value. If you don't understand who you're doing business with, if you don't understand the risks and be able to find ways to address them either by better structures, by introducing new controls, sometimes not doing business with those companies, it really will make a big, big difference. Once we're over sort of the hump right now of trying to build this as a new profession. So it's got its growing pains. We had a session today on being valued and adding value in third-party risk management, because if it's a compliance exercise, it really adds very, very limited business value except for regulatory compliance. The purpose of this actually is to do a better job of managing the relationships you have with not just with your vendor community, but with all companies you do business with. as a third party.
Now, is it enough, though, to just keep up with the regulators, or should
Oh,
we be
heavens no.
ahead of them?
Well, I think basically the regulators are pushing the financial services sector along by forcing this. Where we would really be adding value in the long run is to be able to have all of the mechanics in place and working. And that's kind of where we are right now, is building the mechanics around this. In a better world, where what we would have is predictive analytics around, well, if this has happened in the world at large, how is that going to affect my company? If in fact I'm going to add a new product or service, can I do a pre-assessment in terms of things that I need to do a better job considering before I actually finalize my business strategy? So basically, it's not just the mechanics of the managing the life cycle, but it's getting beyond that to find better ways to add business value.
So with the Internet of Things and big data, do you think we can ever get to the point where predictive analytics will help us hedge risk?
Oh, absolutely, yes. There's a lot of very, very smart people in business intelligence. And so basically what's happening right now is our programs are being built. You're starting to get a data set that's providing some insight. There's very, very few companies that are doing trend analysis, and I don't know if anybody is doing predictive analytics on using the information that you are able to glean through a good risk management program. And so I'm really delighted to be part of building this part of the profession. Where I really want to be myself is at the head of that curve, is figuring out basically, so now you've built this program, you understand how to manage risk, it's not a burden to your company because it's valued. How does that improve business outcomes? How can you make better decisions how to run your business? And would you do things differently if you already had this great body of knowledge under your belt?
Oh, I know we would.
Exactly. And so what I really would encourage is that a lot of our members in SIG are coming from this sourcing and procurement field. If you don't know about this if you don't know enough about it as a CPO or a leader in this field, I would highly recommend that you get yourself up to speed and get ahead of the curve here. Because what's happening is in a lot of companies this is being hived off and moved into a risk function. And the truth is that you can't manage a life cycle when you have disparate programs. And risk people are risk experts, they're not third-party risk experts. So I think basically if you really want to be a leader is get yourself up to speed, make sure you understand it, can add business value so you can incorporate sourcing, risk management, third-party risk management, and help your businesses.
And that's one of the reasons we wanted to make it such a focus. And we do strongly believe, and we're aligned with you, that the CPO, risk is everybody's job, but the CPO, we can make or break somebody's brand just by the wrong decisions that we make. So we have to be aware of it.
It's true. Well, I think what's really interesting about this as well is we started out with vendors. And so very, very quickly, I think professionals became aware that the relationships you have are not just with vendors. So through the Risk Management Association, we've come up with 19 categories for a financial services company of relationships you can have with companies that will never show up in accounts payable, who are third parties you do business with, and 53 subcategories.
Really?
So we're trying to organize it so that you can at least wrap your arms around it. So what that means basically is when you think about it, you are doing business perhaps through a joint venture. You have a joint marketing agreement. You're dealing with different agents, with brokers, etc. So when you start to think about the types of relationships that you have, you can't limit your thinking to vendors. I would highly recommend that people start there because we understand that better from a CPO's perspective. But basically the business has business relationships with many, many third parties. And so having a good program and figuring out how to bring some business value as you start to bring the non-vendor third parties into your third-party risk management program is pretty nascent right now. There are very few companies that are really there. We just did a survey through the RMA, and very few companies have that solved because they're still trying to figure out who they are.
Yeah.
Right? The business knows, but trying to pull it all together so you get one view of risk and basically relationships and risk and performance and costs, etc. And if you can bring that up in a logical way that's fairly simple to understand and bring that up to the C-suite, that's value that has never been there before. It's a brand new source of value. So you're standing on three legs of the stool, right? You've got your cost data, you've got your performance data, and you've got your risk data for those relationships that will make a difference in your company. And that's what this is all about. It's really bringing those things together.
See, like I said, you're always ahead of the curve. We are out of time right now. But I want to thank you for joining us today on the Inside Source Executive Video Series, and I'll see you next time.